it's Andrew Hawnt. You are watching VHS Ate My Brain. Thank you for checking it out. It is the show where I talk about cult films that originally came out on VHS tapes back in the golden era of video rentals. This episode I'm feeling a little cyberpunky, been listening to a lot of cyberpunk mixes, a lot of synthwave and vaporwave and such like, so I thought it was time for something involving sunglasses and trench coats. That sounds ominous. Okay, so I've chosen this episode to be all about the first four films in the Nemesis series, directed by Albert Pyun and of Cyborg fame, and coming out on Imperial Entertainment originally. Nemesis was a really quite solid cyberpunk-themed futuristic action movie from the early 90s. Now, that was followed by some sequels, which I'll talk about in this episode, that are of varying quality, shall we say. So yeah, I was lucky enough to get the original rental VHS tapes of Nemesis 1, 2 and 3. So that's Nemesis, and then Nemesis 2 Nebula and Nemesis 3 Time Lapse from the video store I used to rent from all the time before they closed down. Unfortunately, I don't have those tapes anymore, as they went in the great tape cull that I had a couple of years ago. But got it on DVD, got it on streaming. I'm happy I can still watch some cyberpunk goodness. So we're going to talk about the Nemesis movies by Albert Pyun. I mean, a lot of the stuff in the Nemesis movies was put in through necessity because of budgetary constraints and, you know, limited budget and limited resources they had. But despite that, Albert Pyun and his crew managed to put together some really, really cool movies. I do still have the video store poster for the original Nemesis movie, which I just love. I love the aesthetic of it. That image isn't actually in the film. That does show Olivier Gruner, who was in the movie. It's sort of like a straight-to-video version of Jean-Claude Van Damme, if you can imagine such a thing. So without further ado, this episode is all about the first four Nemesis movies. I hope you enjoy it. Hey everyone, this is Andrew Hawnt. This is VHS Ate My Brain. Thank you for checking it out, both here on Mixcloud and also here on YouTube. Really greatly appreciated. This is the show where I talk about cult films that I've seen on VHS through the years, and it's connected to my book VHS Ate My Brain and the subsequent Scream magazine column that I began a while back. So this episode, I'm going to talk about not one film, but four. Mainly four. I'm going to mention a couple of others that are related, but this episode concerns four movies in a series. Now, back in the VHS rental days, there was always things that I would see on the shelves that would draw the attention. So there would be things with demons on, monsters, familiar things like Freddy and Jason and Pinhead and so on, big stars, you know, actresses I had a crush on, things like that. They would easily draw the attention of a teenage movie fan. And one of those series of films that immediately caught my attention was Nemesis, the Nemesis movies, directed by Albert Pyun. So yeah, the first one of those had a very striking cover that clearly was a riff on Terminator. There looked to be a time travel element, there looked to be cyborgs and cyberpunk, and it was right up my street straight away. So the first Nemesis movie was a no-brainer. I had to rent that. So let's get started on the first four films in the series, where there are currently five and half of a spin-off, sort of. So yeah, the first one, Nemesis itself, was made in 1992, listed as an American cyberpunk action film, co-written and directed by Albert Pyun and starring Olivier Gruner, Cary Hiroyuki Tagawa, Brian James and Tim Thomerson. This is a curious film. So it's made during the 90s, but it riffs greatly on a lot of 80s staples that were brought about in films such as the aforementioned Terminator and things like Blade Runner. In fact, if you cross Blade Runner and Terminator together, you're not far off the basis of Nemesis. So it's the near future. Androids are a normal thing to see around, and a lot of criminals around the world will enhance themselves cybernetically, and they call themselves more than human. Now, Olivier Gruner, who is a martial artist, more than an actor, but he gets by. He gets by within this movie. Is a is an assassin for the LAPD. During a mission, he is attacked by a load of cyborg freedom fighters. These are called the Red Army Hammerheads. You get to know right throughout the franchise as quite a big deal. He is pretty much brutalized by these cyborgs and left for dead. Now these freedom fighters. Now what follows is a strange desert-bound period of reconstruction, surgery, and recovery for the character for Olivier Gruner's character Alex Rain. There is a lengthy sequence in a far-off desert of Alex trying to come to terms with his new self as cyborgian, as a cyborg, a cybernetic creature. So he retrains in martial arts. He ends up with a big mullet. It's all very 90s and post-apocalyptic. Actually, he is found out there by his former lover, another android. They want to bring him back into service to carry on the fight against the Red Army Hammerheads. One of the people, after a lengthy period of rejuvenation and reconstruction and his surgery and retraining in martial arts and getting this sick-ass bod back, Alex is approached by his former lover, another android, and is asked to go back to the LAPD. He refuses. He says he's had enough, and he leaves and goes freelance. However, it's just that his bosses are letting him run free for a while. He's shot, wounded on a job, and that's when we see Commissioner Farnsworth, played by none other than Trance's very own Jack Death, Tim Thomerson, who has him kidnapped and forced into a last assignment where he needs to get hold of some vital security information. And what follows this is a load more low-budget 90s cyberpunk, post-apocalyptic martial arts sequences with lots of exposition, some slightly shonky yet fun special effects. I mean, the whole film is full of some dodgy special effects, but it is fun to watch. It does end up with a great big airborne battle over a cyberpunk city involving Alex Rain having a martial arts battle with what is essentially a Terminator endoskeleton. It may sound like I'm making fun of it there, or if I'm deriding it a bit. I'm honestly not. I love this film greatly, but that is exactly what you're seeing on screen. There is a stop-motion Terminator-style endoskeleton having a martial arts battle with Olivier Gruner's character of Alex Rain that pretty much ends the movie. But it is set up for a sequel. Now, a sequel did eventually arrive, but I'm getting a little ahead of myself there. There are a couple of little interesting points to make about about Nemesis. In fact, that it did have an alternate ending, which was only available in Japan and the German limited edition Blu-ray, according to Wikipedia, which has a darker endings. After Alex escapes and wins the day, there is an extra scene where it is insinuated that they would be assassinated, thus giving it a much darker ending. So we've got, in this film, you have cyberpunk cityscapes, you've got battles between cyborgs and police officers, you've got some interesting special effects that don't always quite meld in very well with the action around them. You've got some cracking action sequences courtesy of Olivier Gruner's quite spectacular martial arts skills. You've also got Tim Thomerson showing up, being a spectacular bad guy as Commissioner Farnsworth. You've got Kari Hiroyuki Tagawa as Angie Liv, and anything with Kari Hiroyuki Tagawa in it is a joy. I mean, if you don't know who the guy is, if you've seen the Mortal Kombat movie, the original Mortal Kombat movie, he was Shang Tsung. Your soul is mine. I mean, how can you not love the guy? Also showing up in Nemesis for some scenes is Brian James, the wonderfully striking-looking action movie bad guy from the 80s and 90s. Sadly passed away since then, but oh god, I loved Brian James. He was such a cool presence in any movie that he was in. Even Jackie Earle Haley is in this movie as a character called Einstein. There's some great people in it, and it does what it sets out to do pretty well. Now, it could be argued that it is just a knockoff of Blade Runner and Terminator and such like. However, Albert Pyun does show some great directorial flair in this. What was done with such a minuscule budget is really impressive, and the film turned out so well that it even garnered a limited theatrical run upon its original release. It is genuinely a cult classic. Nemesis, the first Nemesis movie, is a genuine, real cult classic that I do recommend you see if you're into late 80s, early 90s martial arts, action, dystopian sci-fi movies, of which there were quite a few at the time. Think of things like Cyborg, which was also made by Albert Pyun, things like Salute of the Jugger and Split Second. There's things that have quite a nice cyberpunk aesthetic to them, while not completely adhering to the whole cyberpunk feel. So yeah, it set everything up for a sequel, and a sequel did eventually come out in the form of Nemesis 2, which was known here in the UK as Nemesis 2 Nebula. Fantastic! I remember seeing it in the video store, thinking, this looks awesome. Okay, there's a great big robot on the front. Picked up the big box VHS and checked out the back. Where the hell is Alex Rain? Where is Olivier Gruner? He wasn't in it. Wasn't in it at all. Read the synopsis. It didn't sound like it was really connected to Nemesis in any great way. But I rented it anyway because it had the Nemesis logo on it and it had a robot on the front. I mean, how can I not rent that? That came out in 1995. Again, directed by Albert Pyun. He also directed the original. Yeah, it's an odd one. So it's set 73 years after the first one, after the first Nemesis movie, and humanity has lost the great cyborg wars, of course, and we are now slaves to our new cyborg masters. Some scientists have developed a new DNA strain which could signal the end of the cyborgs, and it is injected into a pregnant volunteer. Now we see this in the movie. We see the cyborgs learn of this lady and her forthcoming baby, and the cyborgs set out to terminate her. See, Terminator reference already. Nemesis 2 has an even greater reliance on the Terminator, but it also has a huge reliance on Predator as well. So, the lady steals the cyborg ship and goes back in time, while pregnant, to East Africa in 1980. And she continues to live there. Well, sorry, she doesn't continue to live there. The baby continues to live there. The mother dies, but the baby is saved. After 20 years, the baby is fully grown, and when the baby is fully grown, the adult is played by Sue Price. She's called Alex. I'm guessing as a link to the first Nemesis movie. Sue Price, who is a bodybuilder with one of the most spectacular physiques you will ever see in an action film. She doesn't have fantastic acting chops, but by God, could she do the action scenes. Phenomenal action scenes in Nemesis 2. However, so getting a bit ahead of myself there. She grows up, and a cyborg bounty hunter, Nebula, is sent back in time to destroy Alex. So there's the Terminator reference there. Again, it's like Cyberdyne. It's like Skynet sending back the Terminator in order to destroy Sarah Connor in the Terminator movie, so that the future will pan out in a different way, basically. While it is listed as Nemesis 2, it doesn't feel connected to it. There are a couple of flashbacks to the original. There's the same logo. There's some of the same things are referenced in the movie, but it feels like a completely different thing. It's gone off at a tangent. And while I wasn't originally, during my first watch of the film, I wasn't that enamoured of it because it was so different to the what I saw as the real Nemesis movie. I did develop a soft spot for this film. Now, the Nemesis robot is often viewed behind some very cheap video jiggery pokery, which just distorts it, and that gives it for me the Predator link there. So, as of course with the original Predator movie, you couldn't always see the Predator because it was cloaked. So in this, it's just kind of a video distortion over the top of the robot until the final few minutes of the movie, where it is uncovered, the cloaking device is turned off, and you see the robot for what it is. It's a dude in a suit. It's a cool looking suit, but as with a lot of these films, in this post-apocalyptic sort of genre, it's kind of clunky. It doesn't look all that practical. But hey, it makes for some cool action sequences as Alex and the Nebula robot face off against each other for the future of humanity. So that was Nemesis 2, Nebula. Before too long, in 1996 even, so just a year after Nebula came out, a third entry arrived. Now, in the UK, it was released here as Nemesis 3 Time Lapse. Elsewhere, I understand it was called Nemesis 3 Pray Harder, or just Nemesis 3. Again, this was directed by Albert Pyun as well, and it continues directly on from Nemesis 2 Nebula. And I mean directly. it couldn't be any more directly continuing on from it, as it was, as far as I understand it, it was shot at the same time, and in fact utilises some leftover footage from Nemesis 2. I'm not entirely sure the amount of Nemesis 3 that is basically leftover scraps from the second film, but hey, with Nemesis 3, I honestly have very little idea what's going on with it. Nemesis itself was quite straightforward. Nemesis 2 was even more straightforward, as it was just like a battle film between Alex and the Nebula robot. The third one introduces a cyborg version of Farnsworth, who we saw die in the first movie. It also introduces two white-wigged lady cyborgs from the future who have the acting skills of the coffee cup that's beside me, but with less froth, and who keep finishing each of the sentences saying the same thing and having a very sudden laugh where ha 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 like that, and it just stops. And they're also driving around the desert in a jeep that has the same sort of visual distortion over it as the Nebula robot did in the second movie, and it's extremely hard to follow. The basic premise: Farnsworth comes back from the future with these cyborg ladies and a further Nebula, this time a CG one, to hunt down and destroy Alex from the second movie, so that the war can be won in the future. It's not so much a retread of the second one; it's more kind of, what can we do while we're out here in the desert? Tim Thomerson, playing Farnsworth again, doesn't appear to be having a best time, but hey, it was a paycheck, and I don't know if anyone that was making it thought that they were making a good film. It's not a good film. In any stretch of the imagination, Nemesis 3 Time Lapse is not a great film at all. However, it does have a lot of entertainment value for me. I really enjoyed it. It was a continuation of the Nemesis series, so by this time, as a teenager, what was I, 1996, so I think that I was about 18 when this came out. I loved it. I loved it anyway. It was made by Imperial Entertainment, who made a lot of straight-to-video stuff. It's a lot of straight-to-video fodder that I was lapping up at the time. Released through Warner Home Entertainment in a couple of other countries. And it was, it says here it came out in February 96 in Germany, June 96 in the USA. So it'll have been around in the UK around summertime 96. So yeah, I will have just about turned 18 when this 85 minutes of utter glorious nonsense came out. Now, something that does bug me about Nemesis 3 is something that has bugged me about a few other films that have been out over the years, where everything you've watched is kind of invalidated in the last moments. Now, towards the end of Nemesis 3, spoiler alert, Alex takes a bullet through the head and forgets everything that's happened. Yeah, please don't do that in films. It annoyed me at the time. I have since watched it again, and it annoys me less now because I'm less foaming at the mouth with less hormones raging around, but still, it didn't work for me when it happened. I was like, what? So she doesn't remember any of the last two movies that we've just sat through. Okay, so during the credits to Nemesis 3 Time Lapse, as with what happened in Nemesis 2, there is a stinger at the end, so this will be continued in Nemesis 4. Now, the footage from Nemesis 4 that comes up was clearly shot at the same time as Nemesis 2 and 3, so shot at the same time and place as Nebula and Time Lapse, and shows Alex, again played by Sue Price, in some like body armor with an enormous gun. There's explosions going off everywhere, and it is, to me, that clip suggested that the whole thing was going to pay off. The cyborg war would be seen on screen. It would connect back to the original Nemesis movie, and we would get a fantastic end to the series. I was wrong. So what did eventually follow as Nemesis 4? It came out under a few different titles, just Nemesis 4 itself, Nemesis 4 Death Angel, and Cry of Angels Nemesis 4. Now, apparently this was also shot in 1996, but of course this is a little time after the second and third movies were shot, so things had changed a little bit. This is a very weird film in that it doesn't directly carry on from Nemesis 3 Time Lapse. So what we glimpsed in the credits in Nemesis 3 Time Lapse was the huge gun, the explosions, the great big scene where she's walking along in the body armor, which looked awesome and got me really excited for the movie. for the fourth movie. But when it came out, what I discovered was a very, very strange film. It is worth seeing, especially if you're in the mood for something quite artistic, in that Albert Pyun this time didn't go for a direct, straightforward action movie and went for something a lot more kind of, not vague, but a lot more blurred in its portrayal of science fiction, action, and cyberpunk tropes. So this fourth film, Nemesis 4, I had it on DVD, on VHS as Cry of Angels Nemesis 4. It follows Alex again, Super Ice, but now she's not in a desert fighting off cyborgs. She is a cybernetically enhanced assassin working for a new boss played by none other than the Wishmaster himself, Andrew Divoff. Now, you got to love Andrew Divoff in things. He does Sinister very well. But Andrew Divoff only shows up in the movie as a close-up. As like a close-up of mostly shows up in the movie as a close-up of a tattooed cyberpunk dude giving her orders. But these are all kind of coded, vague, and oblique, and it's very cool in some ways, utterly bemusing in others. It clearly has a very tiny budget. Something that where it does deviate from the from the second and third movies starring Sue Price, is that there's a lot of nudity, a lot of sex scenes involving Sue. I found that a little bit exploitative of her. I mean, certainly in the second and third she is exploited for her strength and her formidable physique, but in the fourth there's something kind of voyeuristic about the way she is portrayed as a sexy nude assassin in a dark coat and a hat that reminded me of Carmen Sandiego, to be honest. It's an odd watch. It's one of the shortest films in the series. If I remember rightly, it was only about 70 minutes, including credits, so it's only about an hour long. And it just seems a very odd kind of tangent for the series to go off on. Granted, I could understand that the film wouldn't have the budget available even of the previous two movies that had been made back to back, but I think that what was created could have been done in a different way to at least cap off the story. However, there are some interesting visuals. Alex keeps seeing a woman in black watching it from a distance. Again, the digital video distortion is used in some scenes to cover up this woman in black character. And by the end of it, in all honesty, I have no idea what I was watching, or what Pyun was intending for. And I honestly don't have anything against Albert Pyun. He's made some amazing stuff that I have loved greatly for many, many years. I mean, if you look at the guy's filmography, so if you look through Albert's filmography, you will see something like The Sword and the Sorcerer from 1982, the more stranger films like Radioactive Dreams, Dangerously Close, the cult classic Vicious Lips, the cult rock band movie, that was in there. Then, of course, he made Cyborg in '89 with Jean-Claude Van Damme, which was retooled from the Masters of the Universe 2 script, and it, in fact, used some of the sets from Masters of the Universe 2 that had been made for that unmade He-Man movie. So yeah, the Cyborg. He also made the notorious, and I didn't mind it, the 1990 Captain America movie, which went straight to video, in a far lower capacity than the MCU movies. But he also made sequels to some Jean-Claude Van Damme movies, to Kickboxer. He made Kickboxer 2, and then for Full Moon he made Dollman with Tim Thomerson again. That was a great film. And even though Tim Thomerson was phoning it in the next appearance of Dollman, in Dollman versus Demonic Toys, that is still worth a watch. Then he made Nemesis in '92, Kickboxer 4, and he went on to make Heat Seeker and Nemesis 2 and so on. But yeah, yes, if you look at the early ones, he starts off with The Sword and the Sorcerer, and a lot of people still like that. It's still big in the fantasy movie circles. I have a lot of respect for Pyun, but my favourite moment for him will be Arcade. I will cover Arcade in another episode. That was a former release teenage sci-fi movie about a living video game, but I'll cover that in another episode. This one's about Nemesis. He has a lot going for him. He does make some good films if you're not expecting a huge budget, huge stars, or gargantuan set pieces. His stuff is watchable. It's enjoyable. It has a charm of its own. You can see he has some flair. You can see he has an understanding for the subject matter, even if cyberpunk movies about robots and Terminator-like beings and time travel and so on are not really what he wanted to make. But they did, as he said himself, give him the capacity to try out some things that he wanted to pursue because they would fit with that sort of thing. So Nemesis 1 to 4, it's an uneven batch of B movies. If you watch them all back to back, it's the middle two work best together. The first one is a undoubtedly a cult classic. The second and third work okay back to back as two action movies starring Sue Price. The fourth is crazy. It's like an art house film with mutant cyborgs, sex, and cyberpunk. In fact, I really must rewatch that because that does sound pretty good. But it's an odd watch. It is an odd watch that doesn't feel connected to what had even gone before with Sue Price. So what happened next was interesting. Unfortunately, Albert Pyun has been suffering with his health for some years now, suffering with both multiple sclerosis and dementia. So he's had to take a back seat in a lot of productions. However, there has been both a Nemesis 5 and a Nemesis and Cyborg crossover movie, which I'm going to talk about first, just for a minute, because it's just interesting. I didn't know this existed until I was doing research for this episode of VHS Ate My Brain. So there was a crossover between two of Pyun's own movies, so Cyborg and Nemesis, which gave rise to a project called Cyborg Nemesis: The Dark Rift. Now, there is a review for it on IMDb. However, from what I can see, is that the film was never completed. It wasn't completed enough for release. The little synopsis on IMDb states, a US Marine Special Ops team awakens from hypersleep in a long-abandoned underground laboratory complex with no memory of who they are or why they are there, and they are not alone. Something has infiltrated the complex. It says it's directed by Albert Pyun, while it was written by Cynthia Kernan. Now, this is interesting. It's said to star Olivier Gruner as well. I've seen the trailers for this film, the teasers, and what it appears to be is an ultra low to zero budget movie that's been made by fans. Honestly, I don't mean to denigrate the hard work of the people that have made this film or were making this film, but it does look like a fan film. It has that sort of ultra clear, crisp, shot on a DV camera on a tripod feel to it. It doesn't feel like a movie. It doesn't feel like a movie that should be part of the Cyborg or Nemesis series. I mean, if you look back at Cyborg 2, Glass Shadow, that gave us Angelina Jolie and Elias Koteas in a great role. But yeah, that saw Angelina Jolie in an action role. It's fast forward into Cyborg Nemesis, The Dark Rift, which I saw was last updated. This file was last updated in 2016. It doesn't look anywhere near what a continuation of that series should look like. It's I do recommend you do some reading about it, though. It is interesting. It's interesting to see that this was made and this was conceptualized, and it's set after the several centuries after the Van Damme Cyborg movie. Of course, Van Damme isn't in it. It seems to be only connected in title. It's an odd idea. I do want to see this. I'll get back to you if I do. But it's fascinating that this exists. It's like little hangover from the VHS era and the straight-to-video era in an age of streaming movies and viewing things online, where you view things in such often high definition. The cheap bits are even more obvious than ever. I mean, that's something they could get away with easier in the VHS era because of the quality wasn't that great on the tapes themselves. However, as I say, there was a fifth Nemesis movie. Nemesis 5, The New Model, was done in 2017. The synopsis here says, it is the year 2077 and terrorist organization known as the Red Army Hammerheads now dominate the Earth. The fate of humanity now rests in the hands of the new model, Ari Frost. So, what we've got here is something that does connect itself more to the original first Nemesis movie. Even only thematically, and connecting it with the Red Army Hammerheads, they've now taken over the planet. Not bad going for a gang. It does connect it to the original Nemesis movie. And I saw that it was coming. It had the proper Nemesis logo, where the last S has turned into a 5. Oh, cool, okay, fair enough. they're going to do that. Maybe this will end it. Maybe this will give us the ending that the fourth film didn't offer. But again, I haven't watched this yet. I've seen the trailers. Again, I found a lot of stills from it, posters, and a lot of talk about how dreadful this film is. I don't want to pass judgment on that without seeing it, but from the trailers, again, it does look like something that has been made by fans or has been made by amateurs. And it's terrible to see that. It's terrible to see that. The fifth one was just directed by Dustin Ferguson, written by Mike Reeb, and Albert Pyun is listed as an executive producer. In his current state of health, I don't think he's able to really have a great deal of involvement with how these things get made. But it just, unfortunately, I think the budget was just too low, and without more investors and more use of more higher quality equipment, it's just not going to be the thing that it should be. Personally, I don't think it should have been made without high production values. But what can I say? I've been making movies for free on a phone during lockdown, so I can't really complain about that. But anyway, the Nemesis series of movies, they're an interesting curio. Definitely check out the first one, the Nemesis movie starring Olivier Gruner. It's just Oliver Gruner, however you say the name. I may have said it wrong all along. I'm sorry if I have. It is a cyberpunk classic. It's an action classic. There's martial arts. There's some really good cinematography. There's a really damn fine stab at some decent special effects, making it a bit more epic than your average straight-to-video fare. Can this franchise claw any credibility back? Possibly. It depends how a further film is approached and realised. It would need to reintroduce the whole theme of it. It would need to be a low budget. It would need to be limited in scope. And what I would personally like to see is something that ends the franchise completely, that completes it. I'd hate it for more and more increasingly shoddy sequels to be made with increasingly low production values. There must be a way to end this story properly, and if that could be made, I would more than happily check it out. But yes, do check out Nemesis. Check out Nemesis 2 and 3 if you are in the mood for some entertainment where you don't need to engage your brain a great deal. They're fun to watch. Watch Nemesis 4 if you're a glutton for punishment, and watch Nemesis 5 if you want to save me the trouble. Sorry, that was me. I have a great deal of respect for people that do make movies and do complete these things, but when you're working with something where you are part of a franchise, I think it needs to meet or exceed the quality of the previous entry. So that's been VHS Ate My Brain. This is me talking about movies. In this case, it's been the first 4 movies in the Nemesis series, created by Albert Pyun. If you're in the mood for some films that are not entirely original but are thoroughly entertaining, give them a try. Thank you for checking out VHS Ate My Brain. Remember to subscribe. And remember to check out my other shows that are available online, such as Planet Hex, One Shock, Compendium 2020, and of course this one, VHS Ate My Brain. Thank you for checking out the show. I'm Andrew Hawnt. You are awesome. Let's hit play. So that was what I think of the first 4 Nemesis movies. Oh, I appear to have caught cyberpunk. Sorry about that. So if you'll excuse me, I'm going to go and listen to some synthwave, go and have a long drive, and go and find some cyborgs. Thank you for watching VHS Ate My Brain, and remember, be kind, rewind.